Today, we're going to talk about drums. Why? Because we're nerds. Alright, first I'd like to thank everyone for checking out my latest video. I really didn't know what to expect since I didn't do the normal antics that I'm kinda known for. I just wanted to upload at least one song without all of the showboating. I'm sure I'll bring a lot of that back in future videos, but it was really nice to be able to focus on just playing drums for a change. I've actually received quite a few questions regarding the gear that I played, so let's just jump right in. The drums are Tama Star Classic Birch Babinga in a satin white finish. The kick drums are 22 by 18. The first tom is 12 by 9. The second tom is 13 by 10. The first floor tom is 16 by 14. And the second floor tom is 18 by 16. I also have a 10 by 8 tom that I'm not playing at the moment, and I have a 14 by 12 floor tom, again in a matching color. They're not on the kit at the moment, but in future videos, if I happen to throw one up there, at least you'll have the specs and know what size that is. The snare drum is 14 by 8, and it is a maple drum. However, I'm afraid I can't really tell you which line it comes from because it's around 30 years old. In fact, around 15 years ago, I was playing a show in Nebraska, and someone actually stole this drum. It ended up turning up in a pawn shop a few years later, and I was able to purchase the drum back for a lot of money. Hardware. For the cymbal arms, I like the Tama Road Pro series. They're simple, they look great, and they're built like a tank. After that, the arms are placed on a Gibraltar Road Series rack. As you can likely see, I have memory locks on absolutely everything. All of the stands are labeled, so there's never a question as to where anything goes. The hi-hat is a Tama Iron Cobra 900. Attached to that is a Tama Cobra clutch. For the longest time, I played an X-hat between my floor toms, but I didn't like having the sound source come from two different areas. You would be playing the regular hi-hat, then you would go to the X-hat, then you would go to the regular hat, then you would go to the X-hat. That interruption in sound really bothered me, so I decided to just go back to the Cobra clutch. You simply step on the left side to close the hats, step on the right side to open them back up. For the drum throne, I use a Tama First Chair Round Rider. I've tried saddle type seats before, but they just never work for me. As for pedals, I'm using Iron Cobras with the rolling glide cams. I also use heavy wooden beaters made by Gibraltar. As for the settings, the beaters are pulled back just a small amount, and the springs are as tight as they'll go. This setup clearly won't work for everyone. However, I did want to take the time to include it for those that asked me about it. Cymbals. Do you need a lot of cymbals to play well? Well, of course not. Does that concern me? Well, of course not. Tommy Aldridge, Scott Travis, Mike Portnoy, Vinnie Paul, Tommy Lee, Shannon Larkin, Mickey D. These were the drummers who inspired me, and they all had truckloads of cymbals. All of the cymbals are Sabian. Let's start with the hi-hats. AAX medium hats, and those are 15-inch. Above that, we have a 10-inch HHX Evolution Splash. And over here, we have an 18-inch AAX Explosion Crash. And up front, we have a 19-inch Explosion Crash. And to the right, a second 19-inch Explosion Crash. And here, we have a 20-inch AA Raw Bell Crash. And in back, a 20-inch AAX Explosion Crash. And under here, we have a 21-inch AA Holy China. And the ride is a 22-inch HH power bell rod. Drum heads. I've been with Evans for around 12 years. I love them. Let's start with the kick drums. On the batter side, I generally prefer the EQ3 Clear. I've tried EMADs, and I think they sound phenomenal, but they just don't feel correct to me. So I usually come back to the EQ3. For the resonance side, we have a Tama SC logo head with a 6-inch port. At the moment, I have a bunch of blankets inside of each bass drum, but that kind of changes day to day for me. Sometimes it'll be a blanket, sometimes it'll be a pillow, sometimes I'll have them wide open. Sometimes I just have little strips of cloth that I've cut up. Again, that's something that's always changing for me. For the toms, we have EC2s. Sometimes I'll do a G2, but most of the time it's an EC2. And on the bottoms, we have G1 clears. For the snare, I prefer a hybrid on the top. I think this head is phenomenal. On the bottom, it's usually a 300 clear. Vader drumsticks. I play the Extreme Design 5B wood tip. I only play wood tip, never nylon. The number one question that I have received has been about microphones. For the kick drum, I use an Onyx D6 just outside of the port. However, this changes from time to time depending on the situation as well as the sound I'm looking for. For the snare, I use an Onyx i5. However, sometimes I'll replace that with an Onyx D1 instead. Inside of the toms, I have a D4, and inside of the floor toms, a D6. One small thing to keep in mind if you play Tama. Tama places their vent hole right above the floor tom mount. So more than likely you'll have to modify your floor tom legs. Some of the benefits are pretty obvious. Having the microphone inside of the drum alleviates the need to gate that drum quite as heavily. We've all been in a situation where you're in a nice large venue, you have the toms mic'd externally, and it's not the sound engineer's fault, but in order for him to get a nice tight sound, he's forced to gate those drums pretty heavily. So when you hit that drum, there's a certain threshold there, and anything beneath of that threshold, it's not going to open up the gate. So anything that you play that's beneath that threshold, it's not heard. So what you can do in a dynamic way, it's really handicapped. Another thing I really enjoy is the consistency. You take the drum out of the case, you put it on the stand, plug the cord in, and you walk away. Even though it's a different venue, that drum's going to sound the same. All right, the big question, what do they sound like? That's a tough one because everybody's looking for something completely different. For me, it's a sound that I like. But you have to look at it no different than like a Gibson Les Paul. A Gibson Les Paul is going to produce a very specific sound. You're not going to get that sound with an SG. You're not going to get that sound with a Telecaster. You're not going to get that sound with an Ibanez. You're only going to get that sound with a Gibson Les Paul. So is that good or bad? Well, it depends. What are you looking for? Regarding the sound itself, it's very isolated, very focused, lots of attack. Whether that's going to work for your situation, I can't answer that. Does it work for me? Yes. It works with the way that I play very, very well. As far as something that you might be able to imagine, if you're familiar with Vinnie Paul from Pantera, that kind of a kick drum sound, or even Lars from Metallica, that kind of a kick drum sound that it has, a lot of top end, that's kind of the sound that it's going to give you. Again, whether that's what you're looking for, I can't answer that. But the sound is definitely very collared. Now, I don't consider that a bad thing because a lot of microphones that you purchase, they're also collared as well. They're tuned to make a specific sound, and cut certain frequencies. I kind of look at the May internal miking the same way. It's definitely going to give you a very specific sound. It's just whether that's the sound that you're looking for or not. JH Audio in-ears. I use the Roxanne model. They come with 12 drivers per side. Listen, guys, I know everybody can't afford a pair of JH Audio in-ears. I understand that. It's a premium brand. It's the best of the best, at least in my opinion. But it's so important to try and protect your hearing. You can jump on eBay these days and you can pick up a pair of universal in-ears for probably 40, 50 bucks. The quality's not going to be as good, but at least you won't go deaf. And that's kind of a plus. And to keep everything safe, Gator cases. For the drums, the Protector Elite Series. For cymbals, the Elite Air Series. And for hardware, a G Series flight case. Well, all right, guys, I think we've hit everything. If there's anything I've left out, please just leave me a comment below, and I'll try my best to get to that for you. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. And on your way out, if you could just hit that little like button for me, do me a solid, be much appreciated. Well, all right, guys, I think that's going to do it. I think we've covered everything. Well, you need to think of the next line, dumbass. Done froze. Regarding the sound, it's very. Wow, this sucks. Oh, we've covered everything. Yeah, that's what it is. We've covered everything. That's the line. We've covered everything. That's what I need to say. I think I'd rather just mow the damn yard.